Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. We're going to talk about a little mystery with the Swiss Central Bank and its gold. Did they move it quietly? We're going to watch what has happened with the Swiss gold over the years in a very interesting article here that was published by Zero Hedge. So let's explore. Yes, indeed, gold. It is certainly a mysterious metal at times, and how people handle it and store it and transport it is certainly something that is quite a mystery. We see different banks, central banks, sell it out of necessity and accumulate it in vast margins, but the Swiss have always been kind of mysterious. And we've always kind of see what happens with the Central Bank of Switzerland with regards to gold, and it can be quite controversial in times past. This is an article authored by Jan Nieuwenhuis, and I think it quite is interesting as to what is going on in his research. We're going to talk about it here and talk about how you can protect yourself and why gold should be a mystery for you from others. In other words, I would not necessarily go around, broadcasting that you have a bunch of gold if you do accumulate it. In Switzerland, it's a state secret where the central bank stores its gold domestically. That's the first sentence in this article, and already that would cause people to guess and wonder. And typically, it is human nature when there are questions like that, and when the state or a central bank doesn't tell you all the stuff that you'd like to know, conspiracy theories can start to emerge. We certainly have them here in the United States, although I do think that we are a nation that is known for being a bit more transparent in its government and its organizations. There's a lot of we don't know about the gold in Fort Knox and in New York and the whole central bank reserves for gold. From all the information that could be gathered by the author here, the conclusion is that the Swiss central bank primarily stores its gold, and that of foreign central banks and the Bank for International Settlements on Bundesplatz 1 in the capital Bern. Yes, indeed. And by the way, that should show you know, the BIS, the Bank of International Settlement, who is the central bank of central bankers, is in Switzerland. This vault may be one of the largest globally. However, due to a renovation, the vault is now empty. The metal has temporarily been transferred to a federal bunker near Kandersteg, deep in the Swiss mountains. So what led to the research on this topic is a multi-year delay for a gold shipment by the Austrian central bank from the London of Switzerland. From reading from a previous subject article there, some could be tempted to think that the OENB's gold is gone, or that the Bank of England is obstructing the transfer. According, though, to Mr. Nieuwenhuis, London isn't the problem. The Austrian bank shipment was supposed to be in Bern by now, but due to a delay in the renovation of the vault, the gold hasn't been transferred yet. To get to the bottom of this, we'll examine the vaults of the Swiss Central Bank in the article, and there's proof that the OENB is postponing the shipment to the vault in Bern. That's the Austrian bank. And so this is kind of where things are at. If we got to step back in history and what the Swiss have been doing for a long time. They've been digging caves. If there's one country that excels in building tunnels and caverns, it is the Swiss. Bern was founded around 1200 AD on a peninsula on the river Aare. The peninsula is shaped as a hill due to the wear of the water. Enclosed by the Aare and the old city, which could be easily defended by a wall at the west, the safety within the natural fortress allowed the city to flourish. Many of the early inhabitants of Bern had vineyards outside of the city. Already in the 13th century, cellars were being constructed below the buildings in the city for more room and the right climate to preserve wine. The soil in Bern consisted mostly of gravel and sand, put there by glaciers during the Ice Age, as well as suited for constructing cellars. The weight of this ice caused the soil to compress. Today, many of the cellars are being used as bars, restaurants, shops, and more. Since 1983, the old city of Bern is UNESCO World Heritage Site for its exceptionally coherent planning concept. Bern has always retained its historical character, presenting variations of the late Baroque period and late Middle Ages. The old city continues to be a place for living, working, and commerce. The first tunnel in Switzerland was built in 1707 to ease the passage over the Gotthard Massif Mountains in the Alps. Ever since, more road, railway, waterways, and maintenance tunnels have been built, by now totaling an astonishing 2,000 kilometers in length for these tunnels. Pretty amazing. You can ship a lot of gold through those tunnels, that's for sure. Gold like what you see here. But usually it's in bars and other forms that the Swiss have been moving and transporting and storing. In the 1880s, the Swiss started to build a line of fortifications in the Alps for the army to retreat and defend their country against foreign invasion. In the Second World War, a network of military tunnels and bunkers was added. During the Cold War in 1963, Switzerland undertook to provide bunkers for all citizens to take shelter in the case of a nuclear attack. At one point, there was an estimated 300,000 fallout shelters. After the Cold War, many of these bunkers in the Alps were considered obsolete. Some were reopened as hotels and museums or found other uses. Now, that is the background for leading us into Switzerland's vast gold market. Switzerland is one of the largest physical gold markets globally. In fact, it's the largest per individual, per capita of any nation in the world. Not very much is known about it, though, because discretion is one of the services that make this market attractive. Before the 30s, banking secrecy was an unwritten rule in Switzerland. This rule was enshrined in legislation in 1935, which together with political neutrality made Swiss banks attractive for foreign capital, currency, bank deposits, and yes, gold. When in 1968 the gold pool collapsed and the London bullion market closed for 2 weeks, Swiss banks reacted aggressively by trying to take over market share from London. Refining capacity began shifting from London to Switzerland. Currently, there are no London Bullion Market Association accredited refineries left in the UK, while in Switzerland there are 4 giants: Valcambi, Pamp, Argor, Heraeus, and Metalor. You've heard me talk about those. In fact, some of them have tied to blood money. All 4 of those companies actually have been for blood gold. Blood gold. Every year, roughly 2,000 tons of gold moves through the Swiss refineries, measured by non-monetary gold import and export. Next to the vaults of the refineries, there are vaults of commercial banks, secure logistic companies like Brinks, Loomis, etc., and the Swiss Central Bank. In addition, after the Cold War, several military bunkers in the Alps have been sold to niche vaulting companies that build storage rooms for precious metals and other valuables in the deep caverns. There is no centralized gold exchange in Switzerland, so all trade is done over the counter. That's pretty amazing to think about. Switzerland really is unique in that regard, because a few of the large Swiss bullion banks have their head office in the center of Zurich, an often shorthand reference to the Swiss gold market as Zurich. However, this can be misleading, as not all physical trading is concentrated in Zurich. For example, there are refineries in the far south of Switzerland and in the west. Brinks has gold vaults in Zurich, Geneva, and other cities. Numerous other vaults can be found in old military bunkers in the Alps across the south. And we know that there's a lot of others that are tied to jewelry and watchmakers as well. And as we will see, monetary gold is normally stored in Bern. Officially, the domestic gold storage locations in the Swiss Central Bank are a state secret. In April 2013, S&B revealed that 20% of its 1,040 tons of gold is stored at the Bank of England. 10% at the Bank of Canada, and 70% is held domestically in its own vaults, which is definitely the smartest thing to do if you are a nation, to have it in your own country. And the Swiss central bank's main gold vault is in Bern. It's a considerable amount of evidence that most of the S&B's gold has always been stored in Bern. And according to the research by the author there, with the Swiss National Bank was erected in 1907, it was decided to build two head offices to distribute the balance of power, one in Bern, the political center and the capital of Switzerland, and one in Zurich, which is the financial center. The bank was divided into three departments, of which Department 1 and 3 settled in Zurich. Department of 2 in Bern took responsibility for all the issues related to banknotes, the management of gold reserves, and dealings with the federal administration. And that includes storage of the gold bars and coins. The head office in Bern, located at Bundesplatz 1 with the gold vault in the basement, was completed in 1912. It is located in the old city next to the federal palace that houses the federal parliament and federal council. And yes, indeed, so that is kind of where that is. After they established itself in Bundesplatz, it attracted commercial banks with political as well as financial interest in the area. And so having banks in close proximity can have eased their gold dealings in Bern. Until and through the Second World War, Bern's retained in standing as a monetary gold hub. In the 1990s, a commission investigated its role in World War II regarding gold dealings with the German central bank, the Reichsbank, which became very controversial. We know what happened with using tooth fillings from prisoners, Jewish prisoners. But nonetheless, after the war, the first basement floor was modified according to the building archive of the city of Bern, but there's no details of the renovations that are publicly available. And there could be that there is a shelter or extra floors in the vault where this stuff could have been stored. There's a lot of mystery there. And most likely, you can connect lines of what happened throughout the 50s and 60s and to show exactly where some of these things could be. Is there another tunnels and stuff under the bank to where the gold could have been stored? And there is other plans that show where it is, where the basement could be, possibly, and a lot of the research that the author has done. And but nonetheless, it is very interesting indeed to see what has happened and where this gold could be. Other sources substantiate the vault at Bundesplatz 1 is sizable. In 2013, a journalist was allowed to film its monetary gold, but I'm not seeing any evidence of that video other than a screenshot, which just shows trailer and people standing next to these gold bars. But very interesting indeed to see. But nonetheless, where is that gold now? Has it been moved? No one really knows. Now, especially with these renovations and stuff that's going on. On the website for the Bank of International Settlements, they state they offer central banks gold location exchange, safekeeping, and settlement. And there's a reference to the vault in Bern, which the Bank of International Settlement has used since the 30s. And it must be at Bundesplatz 1. So yes, indeed. Amazing. So there's a lot of tunnels. There's a photo of a tunnel connecting the main building and Kaiser House on the DNS. And that is something that is quite interesting to see, that all these tunnels and things like that. And they're utilizing their history, I think, for the storage. Now, in 1999, Swiss journalists discovered that the government had arranged a classified command facility near Kandersteg in the Alps, 40 miles south of Bern, to hide during the nuclear attack. Since 2004, the exact coordinates of the facility are publicly known. So it's facilities like this that very well could lead to a number of locations. Some of this gold could have been moved to and stored. And so what's going to happen with it? Well, it could be just set around there and moved around from time to time as needed or as to be see fit, or just to keep us guessing. Obviously, to transport that gold is risky in and of itself, but very interesting indeed to see what's happening in Switzerland. It has made news. You've heard me talk about Swiss gold and the Austrian bank and the London bank and what's happening with Russia as well. So it's very interesting, especially with news that Ukraine is selling some of its gold recently because of the war, and Tajikistan is adding more. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Very interesting indeed. How do you have your gold stored? What's going to happen to it? Best thing to do is to be pretty secretive about it. It's where you store it. We don't want to let people know. And that's why I encourage people to store, certainly if you're going to store it within your domicile, to have it stored in a very secure location there in a safe, fireproof safe. But if not, and maybe even to supplement some, stored off-site to place someplace, or family member or friend that you trust that you can have access to. And that's what I do. And that way you remove yourself from being the threat of burglary or robbery and the like. Yes, indeed. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to y'all for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.